Conversations podcast.
Okay, so one more time, Fatih Karakas, Michael Nemarich, and Aurélie Sheehan.
Thank you. Hello. Very excited to be here in person. Thank you for coming. So we've been doing this now for a few years, actually, haven't we? This is it's the 5th season for the Conversations podcast. I think we started in season 2. So thank you very much for sticking around and answering all these really amazing questions. And initially, when we started the podcast, the Ask NAATI podcast, we were going to just randomly pick questions, and then I decided not to randomly pick them and ask every single question without editing. And then they ended up being like 2.5 hour episodes, which we chopped up. So there is nothing being edited. All the questions are being asked. And it's fantastic to have you here today to ask your questions in person. I have here the wonderful Aurélie Sheehan, Manager, Certification Policy Development. Thank you. We have the wonderful presenter, Michael Nemarich, as you saw before, the Chief Operations Officer at NAATI. It's pretty much as high as it gets. Higher than that is Mark Painting, and I'm pretty sure he's got other stuff to worry about, right? So I'm like, I'll take 2 of your best, and they were so kind for the last few years, and here we are. Are you ready? Yeah. Just to get things started, I've also, for those of you, has anyone not seen the Conversations podcast? Yep, so it's on YouTube. Conversations, Translating, Interpreting podcast. Like, subscribe. And it's PD as well. You can claim it as PD. There's about 5 seasons worth, lots of episodes there, and we talk to everyone from TNI, mostly around Australia, but globally as well, and you can claim that as PD too. And both on the NAATI website and the All Graduates website, as well as the Next PD website, you can find the form to ask the question to NAATI. Okay, it's open all year round. Initially, we started doing it monthly, and then everything was so busy. Now we're doing it pretty much once a year. Hi. But the form is always open. You can put your question in any time, and whenever we do the next Ask NAATI episode, I will ask those questions. So I do have a few already from the form as well. Okay? Now, this is how it works. Hi, Michael. You mentioned at the AUSIT conference last year that there will be non-language specific diploma of interpreting. Maybe we please have more details. Do you remember saying this?
I say all sorts of things. No, I do actually. Can I? Yep. Thanks, Heidi. So what I should have said in that answer, is that working, everyone? Is that the training package rules were changed to allow for a language neutral delivery of a diploma and above. That does not mean that it has been adopted or taken on by any training institutes. So there was a lot of work done with Skills IQ to update the training package because it used to have to be done entirely in language. The change was made to have the majority of the delivery being okay in English. But then the very specific parts relating to the language, just bring in the language tutor and do those. So it is now technically possible to deliver that, but we're not a training institute, so hopefully there is demand out in the marketplace and a training institution will take it on board.
Thanks. And I think you're right. I was on that committee as well with the Skills IQ, and now, after that update, you don't actually need to have a TAE as well, which is a Certificate in Training and Assessment, so that you can offer it in many languages, because the barrier was the interpreter or the experienced interpreter who was going to teach the language-specific components. They didn't have a certificate of TAE, and that costs a lot of money and a lot of time to get. But now, you don't have to after that Skills IQ update, but hopefully institutions will take that up. But maybe NAATI should do something about it too. Okay, that's how we do it. Questions from you? You have to ask questions. This is what we're here for. Yep, there we go.
Okay, in relation to the specialist health medical interpreter qualification, probably a lot of questions. So starting from, I'd be interested in how many people have been able to attain this qualification. Linked in with that is the fact that my language, which happens to be Greek, when I look on site, there is no available test, at least now, for Greek. So I suspect no Greek interpreters have attained that qualification. So from there, the question would be, when can we expect more languages to be added? But perhaps if we stop at my first, how many people have actually achieved this?
Michael, you might be able to confirm the figures. At the top of my head,
As a guess, it's between 10 and 20.
yeah.
And how long has it been available? Refresh my memory.
So we started to launch interpreting testing at the specialist level.
Yeah.
We designed the test in 2019. So I think 2018, the first test would have been run in 2019.
Okay.
So in terms of the number of languages, you're right, like at the moment we're offering 8 languages. So what we do in terms of language development, we review our language development plan every year, and that's based on a number of criteria. One of them being as well the demand that there is at this level. We look at eligible candidates. We also look at the panel composition. So there's quite a number of criteria we look at. When it comes to specialist interpreting, I think the main factor is the demand that we observe. This is a test that takes, I'd say, between 12 and 18 months to develop for a language that we're not testing. So it's an extremely complex process. And so when we decide to develop a language, we want to ensure that there are actually candidates who are ready to sit the test as well. So that's why we've been taking more, I guess, of a slower approach to development. However, it doesn't mean that we're not going to look at adding more languages in the future. So this is a process that we go through every year. So this year we decided to only add Cantonese, and this will be available for testing, or it has actually just been available for testing, I think. So we review that every year. So at the moment, I can't tell you, yes, Greek is coming up next year, but that's certainly something we reevaluate every year. So yeah.
Just to your point, you said it depends on demand.
Yeah, so we look at the demand in terms of the not eligible candidates, the pool of practitioners that we have, and the interests as well in the community. We also look at training programs available and which languages are covered in those training programs. So we have to make a little bit of a call, because the development is so complex and involved that we would not go and develop like 10 languages at the same time at this level of testing. However, it does not mean that we're not going to consider these languages down the track. Yeah, do you want to add anything?
I can add a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to give a bit more information about the demand from a candidate point of view, we test 69 languages at the CPI level, 29 at CI, 37 CT, 8 for the specialist. We do 1,400 tests a year in CPI. We do 220 tests a year at CI, and conference and specialist between 20 and 30. Those numbers obscure, though, the demand part of it. So 70% of testing at CI level is, so out of 69 languages, 3 of them make up 70% of demand. It's Mandarin, Auslan and Arabic. Even large languages like French, last year we had 1 CI candidate. So when we're looking at developing a specialist test, we've got to expect that it's going to be a subset of the people that have taken CPI or CI. Again, Mandarin for the specialist tests is 90% of the demand.
Can I
Yeah.
Could you do an EOI
Yeah.
to some of the languages that are CI, just to see how many interpreters are interested in taking it to the next level? Because there's quite a few in Greek. And
Yeah, I was going to say, so
Would you be...
should I be flagging I'm interested? You know, I mean, like,
Yeah.
Already flagged. We've registered it.
But yeah, like, could there be an EOI on the NAATI website just to, because, I mean, I agree with you when you say depending on demand. I know there's different kinds of demand, but there's also demand from the interpreter as well. And how do we, as an interpreter, register that demand, you know?
Yeah, I think the idea of the EOI can certainly be considered, and also just contacting us directly and expressing your interest. We do get that, and we like to listen to the feedback and take it on board. So by all means, if there are other requests, like contact us directly. Yeah.
sorry, and one last question on that. What has been the experience thus far with those persons who have attained this specialty in terms of any differences in the work that is offered to them? Dare I say pay? Like, what's been different for those candidates? What can I expect?
So we don't have data on this specifically because that's linked to their own experience and they work with the LSPs as well. But what I can say from engaging with some of these candidates who have been successful, those who have shared their experience with us have confirmed that they were getting a higher pay rates. They were also getting contacted for more opportunities, more challenging opportunities, and therefore really interesting ones. So it has definitely been a positive experience for those. So they got something out of it. But I'm only, basing myself on what's been shared with us. But it's been positive so far. Yeah.
There is an episode on this, on the Conversations podcast. I actually, no, it's fine, it's good. I interviewed 4 specialist interpreters.
Okay.
Spanish, Mandarin, I think 2 Spanish, 1 Mandarin and 1 Arabic. We had Sylvia, Cynthia, Roxanne and Lynn, right? And we do talk about what's happened with your workflow since. Are you getting more work? Are you getting more pay? And we did talk about what needs to happen within regards to pay as well. And some of the LSPs already have given higher rates to the specialists. Multicultural New South Wales, I think, was one of them. I'm sure someone spoke about this morning, I think, was it yesterday, at Alimond, I think, mentioned it as well, that they are going to be standardising and talking about like specialist level pays as well at TIS, they were saying. But I think it's got to follow. Everyone's got to follow suit. But please do watch that episode where we have 4 specialist interpreters. They will answer those questions directly from their experiences.
I wrote to NAATI 2 months ago because I thought there was a diploma called Certified Medical Translator. And the reply was no, there is no diploma at the time being, but it suggested there could be a diploma sometime. You heard about it? So you could be a certified legal translator, certified medical translator.
Sorry, can you hold the microphone very close, please? I can't hear you.
Okay. I'm trying to find out if you are going to have a certified.
They're very low. Sorry, they're very
That's
low.
all right. Is it better now?
Yes.
I'm trying to find out if you are going to have a diploma for a translator, which is medical certified translator.
I can probably hear that. There's a chance that it was me that answered that query. So when we developed certification, we had certified translator and then we had an intention to do certified advanced translator. Due to the rapid advances of neural machine translation, AI, advanced translator has been paused. There is no definite thing here, but we have been talking internally about what does translation certification look like. And there are, again, there's nothing locked in, but there are potentials for something like Maybe there is specialisations for translation, but it requires a fair bit of research and development and industry engagement for us to pursue it.
Go and sit all the way at the back and ask a question. Well done.
Sorry. In terms of my question, I know it's redundant. It's regarding the recertification. If Michael can answer my question or anyone else, I would really appreciate that. Well, it's sort of like series of questions, if you don't mind. I took a picture right now when we're doing the recertification session. In terms of the industry engagement, I do struggle sometimes to come up with something in order to fill out and actually meet the 120 points. Like, for example, some of the suggestions like mentoring or the survey. In terms of the survey, I'm not sure if there are any surveys I can get my hands on. But in terms of mentoring, I mean, I'm a CPI myself. I don't think I can mentor anyone, to be honest. But I mean, are there any other suggestions, alternatives, any resources to get that at least 30 points? I mean, in terms of ethics, it's really easy. I've done a lot of ethics PDs, but for other stuff, I mean, especially with the catalogue, I do refer always to the catalogue, always refer to the catalogue, but when I refer to the catalogue, I feel more lost in a way. It's not lost. I'm more bewildered, to be honest. Maybe that's the right word to put it out. I mean, that's one of the stuff. Again, the language maintenance as well. Like, are there any suggestions? I mean, you said it's flexible, but maybe some suggestions or some tips, or that would be really appreciated. I'm not sure if I was really articulate in terms of laying out those questions, but don't judge me. I drove all the way from New South Wales here. So I'm still actually catching, I'm still sleep deprived, but I hope my question was clear.
Yeah, no, that's you've articulated it well. Definitely, as I indicated, the industry engagement is one of the harder categories to get. We find for practitioners, there is, I'm going to forget the number, the very bottom category on it does allow you to put in something that doesn't fit neatly in the other categories. And so working with the team, if you email info@NAATI, we can probably work a way to go, there is points available in that. You've mentioned that you've done a lot of ethics. Ethics is in that category too. So that's something that we could definitely work on there. It also highlights what I mentioned at the end of my last presentation, which is that the catalogue does need some balancing and it does need some clarification. So that sort of feedback is exactly what we're after. The language maintenance, as we sort of highlighted before, can be subscribing or watching news or movies or the books in your LOTE. That's worth 10 points a year, so that's 30 points potentially there, which will almost entirely cover the that category. In addition to, you can get another 10 points for spending 1 to 4 weeks in the country. So, you can get 40 points if you go back home once every 3 years and read the newspaper, for example. And I say back home, and there is data behind that. So about 95% of practitioners were born outside of Australia.
Okay. I mean, not everything is so attainable for everyone sometimes. I mean, for myself, I can't go back to my country, for example. To be honest, traveling overseas is really expensive. I mean, that's one of the struggles for coming up with an alternative. That's the thing. I mean, the mentoring or the surveys, or I'm really struggling to come up with any other alternative. Anything else, maybe like I was literally the other day, like all the PDs I've done, I've laid it out all in front of me, and I'm like, what one of these could maybe fit in, and like, it doesn't. I'm not sure. Maybe I am stressing too much about it, but I'm to be honest, I'm quite lost in a way. Maybe I don't know. Maybe some alternatives, suggestions. Maybe that will help.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment on your question as well. I understand where you're coming from with language maintenance. It can be challenging. There are other activities you potentially could consider in your culture, like if there's, for instance, a community club, a language club. For instance, I'm French. I'm also a practitioner, so I do have to recertify, and I'm a member of the Alliance Française. That's very easy because there are several around Australia, right? But there might be, what's your language?
It's Arabic.
Arabic, so there might be, a cultural club or a community club, and it doesn't necessarily have to be linked to translation. It's being part of this community. Another example I can give you, for instance, I have two children who are educated in a bilingual way. They go to a bilingual school. At some point in time, I engage with the school, helping out with French reading and helping out with the community. So that could be the kind of activities you can look for, which may be available in your language or culture in Australia, so you don't have to travel. So that could be something to explore for you. I also wanted to comment on your question regarding the surveys. So again, as Michael explained, some of the activities that are proposed in the catalogue are, suggestions. You can also add your own activities that might be more suitable for your language, for your credential as well. So I'd say don't fixate too much on all the categories because you don't have to fill them all in. But another place you could be looking at, and maybe you are already, NAATI sends the NAATI news every month.
Yes.
And sometimes we add suggestions for PDs, but also there may be links to surveys that are being conducted either by, say, universities in Australia, maybe Monash University or MIT University is running a research project. They need input from practitioners, or it might be a survey on the industry and they want input from freelancers. If these are not available, another good place to look for is CSA. They specialize in researching about our industry, and I think it's American. And they often run surveys as well, like state of the industry. They want to hear about freelancers around the world. So there are other avenues you could explore as well on that. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Yes, of course. Pat.
No, that's all right. I mean, I can talk.
It's being recorded.
All right. Thanks, Fatih. You're very kind. What about community functions, celebrations? And I know that some communities invite scholars from overseas. They come. And then would that be also another option in the catalogue as PD? Let's say a literature, expert in Australia talking about in that specific community. And then I'm sure practitioners attend, it could be Arabic community or Farsi or Turkish community. And I do agree with the practitioner. The catalogue needs to specify and give more options. I mean, it's very good, but it can be even better. The PD problem, Fatih mentioned really well. I think it was this morning. Yes. And it is a big challenge for a lot of practitioners. And also, I want to come to a specialist, certified interpreter, then you're going beyond that. We all know that there has to be a financial incentive there. Because we've been talking about, I've been in this industry for many, many years, decades actually, and we've been talking about certain levels, before it was professional, paraprofessional, now certified. But when it comes to pay, and a lot of LSPs pay mostly the same amount, even for very little, recognized practitioner, interpreter level as well. So I think seriously in this industry, if we're going, because retention percentage is pretty low, because it's all financial. It comes to financial, because if you can't be financially, if that industry is not financially viable for you, regardless of what level you have, you step out of it. So I think LSPs and industry itself needs to consider seriously introducing pay levels. And then if I'm going to go, I'm certified interpreter, if I'm going to go the specialist level, I need to know there is a big jump there. Because if you go to dentists and they've got fees, and then they actually study another 3-4 years, they become periodontists, for example, and their fees goes to sky. I mean, there is incentive there. But for interpreting translation industry, if this financial incentive is not there, regardless of what we say, we'll be going around a circle. I personally experienced that, and we've been talking about that, but unfortunately, this hasn't been introduced in the industry as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, and couldn't agree more. As you know, I mean, as you were speaking, I was thinking about the panel yesterday and how, a collective effort is required. At NAATI, we certainly encourage the different levels, and we are supportive of the commensurate level of pay as well. But with a standard body, and we are involved in those negotiations, in those consultations, but us alone, we can't really, change everything. So I certainly agree with you, and I think, a collective effort is definitely required. And we, a few ideas were floated around yesterday by some of the Commonwealth representative around, endorsement of LSPs, and I think that could be a good avenue to help with that. Do you want to?
Right. Just fully supportive as well. And like Aurélie, it's sometimes frustrating for us. We put a lot of effort, and lots of people have put lots of effort over decades into the certification system and really building a system that's designed to have levels and to see it in the industry. And I know you've got a question on that sheet, Fadi. We might as well just start talking about it. Unfortunately, just having a NAATI number is now being the consideration for I'm not going to say all LSPs, certainly not the case, but so the desire to go up is not there, and the pay is not there. And we are very aware that the standards that we set and the tests that we have are top of the top. But if you can only make $10,000 to $20,000 a year, which is the AUSIT Queensland survey just last year came out with, in a highly casualised, unstable environment, it's very difficult to decide to do a master's degree and take a crack at a specialist test if you're going to get $11.84 for 15 minutes by sitting on a phone for a whole day. So we are very aware of that. I echo Aurélie's comments that we believe that the work potentially in LSP certification or similar will go some way. We see really positive signs from government on the current language sustainability work, with the caveat that we know that there are plenty of reports that are stacked up in shelves that not necessarily have been worked on before. I'm not telling anyone in this room something they don't know around that. So we will keep advocating where we can, but it is a collective effort. And it's extraordinary to me that, sorry, I'm not a translator or interpreter. I should have put that out there really near the start. But when a plumber charges me $450 to turn up to my house and not do anything, that a highly skilled profession that literally saves lives can't demand more than $12 is extraordinary to me. And I, again, from an outside, I've been with NAATI for 6 years, but I feel like the conversation needs to be talked about more about risk. Interpreting and translating, to me, from listening, often gets talked about as a social service or a right. And I absolutely agree with those points. And I like to see that. But I know that lots of people are talking about it, that are procuring, consuming. It's an economic decision. So the Deloitte report, as part of the Language Sustainability Forum, came up with an estimate, I think it's around $390 to $890 million a year. $890 million, almost $1 billion a year it is costing Australian society from the underuse or underutilisation or no use of interpreters and translators. There was a study done in Victoria here, in Northern Health, and the use of an interpreter in a hospital setting reduced the bed stay from 9.14 days to 5.9. When there was no intervention, 9.14 days. So there's a huge opportunity cost in having a bed taken up by someone that shouldn't be in it. We've got ramping issues with ambulances all around the country. But then there is a financial cost in that as well, in that the research I did was it's somewhere between $3,000 and $4,500 a day for a bed in a hospital. So using an interpreter for 1 hour would save that hospital $15,000. So I feel like, personal opinion, I feel like we've got to stop talking about social justice, and I feel like we have to start talking about risk and money, because the work that you do will absolutely save lives, and it is a social good, but it has a genuine economic return. A study I saw from the US was every dollar invested into interpreting services had a $6 return. And again, another non-T&I related thing of risk is our office in Canberra. We just had the fire inspection done on it. $600 to have someone come and look at a fire extinguisher and a gauge that I can already tell needs replacement. That's to do the inspection. And then they will come back next week and charge me another $600 to put a $50 fire extinguisher in the hole that the old one was in and sign a certificate that says we're now fire safe. But we do that as a business because the risk and the liability is there. And quite unfortunately, I think that both because it's migrant communities or because the people that are not getting the service they need aren't suing or aren't making those liability claims, that it's not being seen as the risk that it actually is by not using it. So it's a very long-winded way of me saying I fully and utterly agree with your point. I would just love to see I would love to see all of us start really getting to the point of, like, everyone, all the care industries, aged care, nursing, they're all undervalued. The ones that get the reward are the ones where risk's involved. And I love and I've just kept talking even though I said I was about to stop. But lawyers are just interpreters. Not just interpreters. Lawyers are interpreters. So the law is freely available to everyone with an internet connection. Why do we pay lawyers? Why do we pay them $300, $400, $500 an hour to interpret English to English? Why would we do that? And the reason is risk and the risk of being sued. And so I really feel like if we can start talking about that economic value and the risk, we might be getting somewhere as well. But I appreciate NAATI's been around since 77 and AUSIT's been around since the 80s. And we're the most advanced potentially in the world at what we're doing, and we've still got these challenges. So it's not an easy journey either.
There's a lot of movement these days, though, at government level, at LSP levels, at NAATI level, AUSIT level. So I think now is the time. If there's going to be any change, it's now, I reckon. I think we've talked about it long enough, and need to kind of like make a hit list and then get working at it. Yep. Oh, sorry, you, and then you.
Yeah. It's part question and part recommendation or suggestion. Throughout the conference, we're talking about AI and how we can keep up with the technology. if we can provide evidence that interpreters or translators are trying to learn this technology, can that be used as a point, as a PD point?
Absolutely. So Michael's mentioned that the catalog is being reviewed, and as we're doing this, we're also monitoring very closely what's happening in the technological space with AI for several reasons. I mean, we want to make sure our tests remain relevant over time, but also to make sure that the requirements we have, or like the activities that we suggest for professional development, are also aligned with the demand of the market, right, and the industry. So absolutely, and we are planning to have some activities related to this, and as part of the initiatives around providing more PDs as well, like what Michael was mentioning on NAATI Learn, we're also looking at opportunities to connect with CAT tools providers to see if we could have access to more resources in that space, or even preferential rates for practitioners. So watch this space, because we are actively working on it right now. So yeah, anything you do in this space right now would count anyway, but there'll be more coming at our end. Yeah.
Where did she go? Oh, yeah.
Thanks. My question isn't for NAATI, but to bring some clarity to what question and comments you made, Ibrahim, if I may, with regards to the pay rates. Sometimes I am reluctant to speak out because I may be seen to be biased, but I represent a language service provider. And some of the comments you made, I think, are not justified. Let me explain. You talked about pay rates for specialist legal interpreter. I would ask you, have you heard of any pay rates at the moment? Question one. Two, what are they? To both those questions, I don't think you'll have an answer, because there are none that I know that are actually published. What happens is a language service provider would offer the work to a specialist legal interpreter. They would set a rate. That rate is not printed anywhere, because one interpreter may be asking for $100, $120, $150 an hour. If the LSP is satisfied with that, they will pay that. They are being paid higher. Now, I would also ask you to go and ask those specialist interpreters what rate they are expecting. Naturally, they're not going to tell you what they negotiated, but I am 100% certain they will confirm that they do not accept the LSP's standard rates. That's point one. And I think people just make some, with respect, comments without understanding both sides of the equation. Secondly, in relation to procuring or offering work to a specialist interpreter, contractually, LSPs are obliged to offer that work. We need to report back on how many and which of the actual cases we offered to a specialist interpreter. So these can't be just forged. So I think this clarity needs to be made, and not just theories with respect, because I haven't seen any rates published for those specialist interpreters fixed in concrete. I really haven't, and I've been around, as you know, as long as you have.
Oh, can I ask a question? Thank you, Ismail, for your comments and clarifications. I've got a question that was posted online, so I'll just ask that one. From NAATI's perspective, what can be done to incentivize CPIs to get CI certification in those languages where CI testing is offered? So we know that if you've got your RPI and your test is available, you've got how long? Was it 1 year to sit it? 3 years? RPI? If you've got RPI and then your CPI test becomes available, how long do you have to sit the test?
I think you can sit it straight away.
Until you expire.
Until you're expired, yeah.
So it could be up to 3 years.
Up to 3 years. But with CPI, you can sit on CPI for the rest of your life. You never forced to do CI, all right? So what can be done to incentivize CPIs to get their CI certification where those tests are offered? Michael?
That's a very good question. Especially, I mean, if the testing is available, and I mean, we offer CI testing in 29 languages, so we're talking about a range of profiles there as well. I think, yeah, it will all depend on, you know, if the candidate is ready as well to take the next level up as well. So you're talking about making it compulsory for them to sit a CI test?
Or maybe, from my understanding of the question, it could be a couple of those things. So that, but also, you know, from CPI to CI, obviously you got to go and sit your simultaneous and long consecutive site translation. Maybe is it more PD around that area, more education? Because, if you're a practitioner already, you don't necessarily have to go and study somewhere to sit the CI. You can have your CPI for a number of years and then you're eligible. But the thing is, that kind of training is not very easily accessible unless you go somewhere, or, you know, we've been doing it for a while now. But maybe that's that question as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about the training because when you look at the CI test, there's a simultaneous interpreting component, so definitely more training or, you know, training in the chuchotage space would definitely be something to look at when preparing for the next level up. And you're right, like training might not be as well, maybe available in all these languages as well. So, but I mean, at NAATI, we have supported cohorts of candidates through various initiatives. Some of them involve mentoring, also working with LSPs. So there could be potentially some avenues there for them to gain more experience, more exposure, more mentoring to then be ready to the next level up. That could be one option if training is not available. But definitely, if you have a CPI and you're looking at doing a CI, you would need to have at least that chuchotage component and at least 2 years of experience, I believe. So, you know, through the mentoring process, that could be an option to encourage more people. But I guess I see it really like based on the language as well that we're looking at, because there would be different options depending on the language. The candidate, the practitioner is looking at sitting at the CI level as well. So, yeah, I don't know, Michael, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, and then there's, I guess that goes to the parts that we've already mentioned, which is things that are a bit out of our control, largely out of our control, which is the demand part. So that maturity of conversation, you know, when we're talking about the medical profession, we know that there is multiple levels that you want. So if you've got a rash on your arm, you might go to the pharmacist. If you've got a sore kidney, you might go to your GP, and then you know that you can keep going up until you get to the level you need. I feel like, again, from a bit of an outsider point of view, I feel like that conversation with interpreting it's one level. So building that broader understanding that different levels of interpreters have different skills and abilities and should be used in different scenarios, and then compensating appropriately for those skills, I think will go some way. And I know, that's a very large conversation around everything that's being talked at AUSIT and in this here as well. We do have a control group in the system as well, which is Auslan, and the demand for Auslan CEI is high because they are getting, from what we know, they are getting higher pay for having the higher credential and are getting used more often.
I mean, CIs in spoken languages also get higher pay than CPI. I mean, that's an incentive there as well. I mean, I'm saying that from a point of a practitioner. I interpret, I translate, I get paid more than I used to when I was CPI. You know, so, I mean, there is that incentive too. But maybe, again, like from a training point of view, because interpreters, translators are always so busy and we're always so broke, you know, it's like, all right, you want to, maybe that's maybe what Elias was saying before, just really break it down for people, right? Are you a CPI who wants to sit a CI test? This is what you need to do. Here are the PDs, courses, whatever. Just make it more accessible, I guess. I know everything's on the website, but I think sometimes we really need to break it down for people, because you work all day, you know, vicarious trauma coming out of your left ear. You come home, you've got to take care of the kids, cook, and then what? You sit down and say, how do I upskill? Right? Is it pretty much the same like that?
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Dylan Hartman. I'm a Thai to English translator and the founder of Akidocs. I've got a question to ask both of you, and it's a question I asked in Adelaide in 2018, and I'd love to see if there's been any progress. So NAATI, as a accreditation authority, is known all around the world, and our reputation precedes us. What steps, if any, is NAATI taking to have our credentials recognised in other countries, to help expand the scope and volume of work available to us? Yeah.
Find us in New Zealand is the starting point. Look, we've, and I'm sure Aurélie will add some really valuable stuff to this as well, but from 2018, when certification was launched, for 4 years from that point, all the effort went into building out languages, skills that we needed to test. To be blunt, we were a bit flat-footed at the start. There was only 3 languages available year one, and then a massive recruitment drive came from that point, and with Mark's stewardship as CEO, a dozen languages a year added every year since. So getting the system and the availability right for Australia was the priority. That was definitely number one. We like to think there is always more to do. We just finished the continuous improvement program, for example. We're looking at the recertification catalogue now, so we will continue to try and innovate and improve where we can internally. But we do have more headspace than we did 3 years ago. And that has allowed us to start engaging more internationally. New Zealand is number one. Very similar market though, and across the ditch. They but fully adopted NAATI interpreting standards, not translating standards, from July 1 this year. And then we have, we were actually just looking the other day at what international conferences we will start to attend in the next year. But that goes in line with what we've done this year. So we have hosted delegations, and I'm going to miss some. We have hosted delegations from Japan and Vietnam, definitely. We attended the Saudi Translation Forum by their invitation. We didn't go there on our own money. They flew us over to learn from us. So we are starting to get additional contacts internationally and talk about our system and the value and professionalism of the sector here in Australia. And we've had interactions with the Canadian Terminologists, Translators and Interpreters Council over just the last few weeks, actually. And need to brush it off, but a couple of years ago we did a bit with CCHI in the US. So, yeah, long-winded way to answer a short question, which is sort out what we had first, and then over this year and next year, I think you'll see much more of a push. But I would add one more part to that before I pass on to Aurélie. We are also very focused on not wanting to spend money that should be in the industry in Australia that NAATI has to pursue global glory if it doesn't make any sense. So what we're being very selective in that, in not just flying around the world to rack up frequent flyer miles. If it doesn't add value to the industry in Australia, we're not going it.
I think you've summarised it all, Michael. But yeah, certainly I can just add that, yeah, we really, we have been engaging more internationally, and I think something we can be proud of is how well respected our system is and how highly regarded it is. So we take great pride in this, and we are definitely keen to engage more and have the certification I guess, known better where it's not, and accepted as well, and creating those relationships. So yeah, watch this space because it's ramping up a bit more now. So yeah.
I've got a. No, oh, sorry. After you.
Yeah, it's not a question, but just to follow up to what Dylan said and to what you said as well. I was speaking to Holly this morning, our presenter from Arizona, and she was saying about the shortage of Tagalog interpreters, and that's my language. So I went to approach her, and she just said that, yeah, our certification here in Australia, our certification test really is, yeah, a lot higher from what they have there. So we should really be proud of that. But yeah, I would really just encourage, yeah, NAATI and everyone that's involved in just pushing for our profession to be more, yeah, known, just not just here in Australia, but internationally as well. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. Watch this space.
Wait, we've got one more.
Watch this space. Okay. Can I ask a question after that? Thanks. Yes. Last two questions. One of them's mine.
I want to ask, with CI tests, you have simultaneous in the test. I guess CI and CPI are more general, like a community interpreting, right? And then because you have all these specialized category. So I have been working as an interpreter for over 30 years. I've done more than 350,000 jobs on record. None of them require simultaneous. And why do we have to have simultaneous included in the CI test?
None of them required simultaneous. CI?
Yeah, CI. So CI has 3 task types. There's simultaneous monologues, so in each direction there's 2, and then consecutive monologues, and we've got 2 site translation tasks. So is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, actually, I forgot one thing. When I prepare myself for the CI test, I thought, I haven't done any job that requires simultaneous. So in one of my assignment, it was a medical interpreting assignment, and I practiced simultaneous. In my entire 30 years service, I only have one complaint, and was that assignment. She called tears and complained that she found it really disruptive because I used simultaneous model.
What setting was it?
Huh?
What setting was it?
Medical.
Yeah, but what kind of an appointment was it?
Medical consultation.
So one-on-one?
3,
So doctor, patient, and you?
Yeah, doctor, patient,
But why would
and
you
myself.
use simultaneous in that setting?
Because I want to test it. Because
but-
because I prepare myself for the.
Yeah, but that's not the
CI.
setting you would use simultaneous.
Yeah, but it's community. CI and CPI are both for general community interpreting.
Yeah.
So I want to find out, why do I get test for simultaneous for community?
Can I, as a trainer, answer that?
Setting.
All right. So when we are training people for CI and simultaneous and long consecutive, community interpreting doesn't mean that when in community interpreting and you have a triangle, so doctor, patient, interpreter, I don't need to do simultaneous there. Okay? If there are multiple people speaking the same language, and when they start speaking amongst each other, family, that's when I do simultaneous to the doctor. Okay? Or if I'm in the court as a CPI or a CI, CI if you have a CI level, in the court, if I'm next to the accused and all the court is talking about whatever they're talking about all day, I need to do chuchotage, simultaneous interpreting for that person. So in your 30 years, you never went to the court?
I've been doing work for court as well, but what I'm trying to say is CI why we need to do simultaneous when it's not required in the community.
But that's what I'm saying. It is required. So in a mental health situation, for example, when you don't want to pause someone constantly when they're talking about their issues, we recommend simultaneous there, okay? When we have multiple people speaking the same language amongst each other, a family fighting over something, we need to do that simultaneously to the doctor. Or when two doctors are speaking to each other about a treatment, and then when they're speaking to each other, a doctor or nurse or whatever, then I simultaneously interpret to keep this person linguistically present. That's why we're doing simultaneous. If it's doctor and patient and interpreter, I don't need to do simultaneous there.
I mean, I have done a family consultation with doctor as well, and several people talk at the same time, but they talk one at a time, not simultaneous.
I think to be perfectly honest with you, we really need to have a look at that training of where you need to do simultaneous. You don't do simultaneous in dialogic interactions. You do simultaneous in two areas, or maybe three. Multiple speaking the same language, you interpret for the other party to keep them linguistically present. Or in the courtroom, when the whole court is talking all day, you whisper to the accused ear all day long simultaneously to keep them linguistically present. Or we recommend for mental health, if someone's telling a really, for example, traumatic story, you don't want to constantly pause them to break down their thoughts and feelings. That's when we recommend simultaneous interpreting. This is face to face. You can't really do simultaneous on the phone. This is face to face.
We're out of time, Fatih.
Okay, so we have to, I think, have a look at the training. Yep. All right. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to ask this one last question, okay?
Well, you just hogged our spot, so.
I just find it interesting that way. Just keep it very short. I think this is for you. My question is, so many students I teach complain that NAATI test them on the language of their home country. This is, I'm reading, not me. Which often is more formal. Why does NAATI not test the language used in Australia and the slight evolution of language here, which is casual? Does that make sense?
So, again, very interesting question. Look, the tests that we run are standard tests. So we are basically, I mean, there's a few things in this question. So first, they're standard tests, they're generalist tests. So in terms of the language that we test, like it will be based on, we've got a language policy, for instance, that we develop. So we look at the standard form of the language, and then we do allow borrowing or different variants as well, as long as they remain consistent. So here, I think it's, suggesting that we expecting another form of language compared to what's spoken here. I'll be honest, I think it's really hard to answer because you can't standardize that. We need to have like a point of, reference. So that's why we've got on our website a language policy for our two streams, interpreting and translation for each language. And that's kind of sets out the rules, if you want, for the evaluation of language policy. These language proficiency. These policies are developed by our examiner panels in consultation with NAATI. So it's really like the base standard for that. Now, we also have to think of the setting of the interpreting as well. That was interpreting or translation interpreting. I guess it all depends on the setting of the interaction as well. If it's justified to use a more casual form of the language, I don't think that would be penalized. If it's a setting that's more formal, then we would also expect that formality to be there. We're not going to decide to just use whatever's spoken here and we'll assess on that. We need to have some form of standard to assess the language overall. So, so that's why we're doing this.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone. That was fantastic. Thank you so much for your questions. Round of applause for Aurélie, Sheehan and Michael Nemarich. Thank you. Those of you who have not subscribed yet, have a look at the Conversations podcast. It's on YouTube and wherever you can get your podcast from. Free of charge, free PD, okay? And you've got some previous episodes as well. If you have tickets to the gala dinner, we'll see you there. And if not, we'll see you tomorrow for some more amazing presentations. Thank you all so much.
Conversations Podcast.